what most people don't realize when it comes to my keynote is I think you see bucket list and you you get a sense of my story and you put together in your mind what you think the keynote will be, right? I understand. I know what a bucket list is and I get it. And what I found is that the depth of the impact, what really happens here is that it ignites people and wakes them up to this idea that they can be the best version of themselves and gives them the tools and the actual tangible small steps to make that happen.
Today's guest on the Keynote Curators podcast is Ben Nemtin. You may know Ben from MTV's The Buried Life. He's also an acclaimed keynote speaker and a best-selling author. President Obama called Ben and The Buried Life an inspiration for generations to come. And Oprah declared their mission truly inspiring. He's been featured on CNN, Fox, NBC, and many other media outlets. In our conversation, Ben and I discuss his radical possibility methodology on how one can strive and achieve their dreams. And most importantly, how to overcome the obstacles and what's in your way. It's a fascinating conversation. Ben's commitment to living a life of full self-expression is contagious. We appreciate you being with us. Listen in, you're going to be smarter for it. Welcome to today's version of the Keynote Curators podcast. I'm Seth Dechtman. I'm your host and the president of the Keynote Curators. Our very special guest today is Mr. Ben Nemtin. Ben, welcome to our podcast.
Seth, so excited about the New York Knicks this season.
We're on an upswing. I have to tell you, it's a slow burn. The flame is getting higher, but I like the progress versus a big peak and then a big trail off after that. So who knows? And after what's going on with the dispersion of everything in Brooklyn, the East has lightened up for us a little bit. It's a little bit heavy with the Celtics and the Sixers. So, and Miami Heat's actually always there. So, there might be a little bit of a fissure for us to walk into and gain some ground. But thank you for your interest in the New York Knicks.
Absolutely.
So Ben, let's just dive in right to the heart of the matter and the deep end. If you could share with everyone what brought you to where you are now in terms of keynote speaking, in terms of the work that you do with all sorts of organizations around the world.
Well, let's start at the beginning, shall we? I'm going to try and do this quick. It's going to be difficult, but I think I can tell this story quickly. So
I have faith in you.
Thank you. Hey, if the New York Knicks can win, anything is possible. So let's take us back to my first year at university. We're on the west coast of Canada, Victoria, British Columbia, where I grew up. I was playing high-level rugby. I was on the national rugby team for the under-19 squad. I had an academic scholarship. I was living the dream, quote unquote. Everything in my life was going the way I thought it should be, but the thing that was missing was I just wasn't happy. I put so much pressure on myself to live this perfect life, and I made it. But the pressure was starting to crush my spirit, and I started to get anxiety. I was training for the World Cup. I was a high-pressure position playing fly half. I was kicking the field goals, calling the plays. And I was worried I would miss a kick, an easy field goal at the World Cup. And this anxiety around missing this kick. And by the way, I'd missed a big kick in high school. So this was had haunted me. And this anxiety caused me to have trouble sleeping. And I slowly slipped into a depression. And I'd never experienced anything like that before in my life. And I was crippled by this depression, dropped out of school, lost my spot on the rugby team, ended up not being able to really leave the house. And so eventually started to seek help. I got a therapist. But what I also realized was that the people that I surrounded myself with really dictated in a large part how I felt. And I started trying to only surround myself with people that inspired me, really because I just needed to lift my spirits. And I sought out this one kid that was really inspiring. He was a filmmaker. And secretly, I had always wanted to make a movie. And so I asked him if he wanted to make a film. And we got 3 other friends involved. And we started to make this documentary about a bucket list. Because I realized that I had not been up to this point doing the things that I truly wanted. I was doing the things that I thought I should be doing, or that other people had told me meant success. But until that point, I realized that I hadn't actually thought about what I wanted, nor had I actually ever declared what I wanted. So we wrote down all the things that we wanted to, and that was our bucket list. And we hit the road for a 2-week road trip to tackle our bucket list and help other people achieve their bucket list items. Now, This was just supposed to be a 2-week road trip where we make a short film, show our friends back in 2006. And we begged, borrowed, and stole to get this tour off the ground. We got an RV from a friend. We bought a secondhand camera on eBay. We'd throw parties as fundraisers to pay for gas. And when we hit the road, unexpectedly, it got in the news and people started to hear about it. And then strangers reached out and they said, I saw your website with your bucket list. I can help you cross this thing off. I can help you cross that thing off. And then they also sent us their dreams. And so we started helping other people achieve their bucket list items. And so this 2-week road trip ended up lasting 12, 13 years. We just kept doing it. We went back to school and then we do it in the summers. And then I dropped out of school. And then these big list items like make a TV show, play basketball with Obama, write a New York Times bestseller, have a beer with Prince Harry, all these things that were pipe dreams. We never thought were possible.
Give a speech, a best man speech at a wedding that you're not invited to, something. Is that one of them?
Give a toast at a stranger's wedding. Exactly. Yeah. They all slowly started to happen. And then we realized that helping other people achieve their dreams actually meant more than those big list items. And so that was this journey that led me to realize that this whole thing was just a journey of self-discovery. And my bucket list was just a list of all the things that are going to bring me joy and happiness and allow me to be true to myself in a world that was pulling me away from who I truly was. And that when I'm true to myself, magic happens. That's when I'm more powerful. That's when I make a bigger impact. And that's when I'm happiest. And so now my job is to help people be true to themselves and do the things that they love by connecting it to their performance as a professional and helping leaders embrace this idea that they need to lead with authenticity and lead with empathy and also take time for themselves because they can't take care of their teams if they don't take care of other people. And that when you create an environment where people feel like they can be the truest version of themselves, that's when you succeed. And that's when magic happens in your organization because people really unlock their true potential.
Thanks for sharing that because it's such an interesting story, frankly, and it's so relatable. The struggles, the path, the getting something accomplished that's bigger than yourself, requiring team and community around you. A few things crossed through my mind, especially when you shared, I'm going to do this and I'm going to try to get through it as quick as possible. It's like the Rolling Stones playing Satisfaction. How do you make it fresh and new each time over so many years? And I'm just thinking, how many times have you told that story, right? And on the one hand, I don't know, you can speak for yourself, it's overplayed, but on the other hand, it's the origin story and it's important.
Yeah. And it's funny. I sometimes people ask me that, do you get tired of telling the story? And the answer is not really.
Yeah. Well,
because it changes. Honestly, the story is the same, but as I grow and I learn more about myself and I understand the significance and the depth and the importance of this, and the importance really gets anchored into my purpose, I get re-energized to tell the story because I know how important it is. And I also have new levels of understanding of why it's so important.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I just think that's why it's important for me to live my story. Like I don't work, I live my work, right? So I'm constantly pushing myself to be truer to who I am, be more authentic, and also learn about myself and learn about why this is so important. This is not a new idea. I didn't come up with this idea. This whole project, the name of it is called The Buried Life. That is the name of a poem that Johnny was assigned to an English class in 2006, written by an English author named Matthew Arnold in 1852. It's over 150 years ago. And this poem articulated the same feeling and experience that I'm talking about, which is that we have all these things that we want to do, but we don't do them because they get buried.
Yep.
And we have moments when we're inspired to go after those things, but the day-to-day buries them. Life gets in the way. This is the human experience. We are getting more and more buried as human beings because of technology, because of isolation, and because of distraction, because of consumption. And so we need to make sure that we can unbury these true passions. Because if we don't, we're gonna suppress our potential. We're not gonna be the full version of ourselves. And so what's interesting is like I've been on this path to understand who I am. And through that, I've realized that is actually also my life's work. Yeah. And so this whole bucket list thing, which started just as a laugh, let's just have as much fun as possible. Let's go on a 2-week road trip. It led to these huge, meaningful lessons about life. And as I do more learnings with through Gabor Mate or the Hoffman process or, Joe Dispenza, it come back to those same principles which are the same things that I am talking about. So when I tell the story, if I ever get tired of it, it's such a big story. I just tell different parts of it, right? Like I just say it in a different way. I think back to like, what am I excited about? And let me tell a version of the story that emphasizes that lesson.
That's actually really important. You know, you read my mind, because things that you had a laugh with or that you accomplished on the bucket list, and we could say knock them off, check them off, whatever. Years ago, when you revisit them now after you've accumulated the learnings and gone through processes of transformation, they're different learnings out of the same event, the same incident, right? And that's what it sounds like. So it's no different than the origin story. While you say you don't get tired of it, it's that you're in a different place, you have a different voice, you're standing on top of different accomplishments and different experiences. So while the Stones might play Satisfaction over and over again, it's never the same because everybody's different, including the audience.
Exactly.
And, you know, we've had some time recently to break some bread, have a dinner together and chat. And what I'm present to, Ben, and why I think you've had the success, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but one of the contributing factors to it is, it's not just about, hey, here's my list and I went out and did it, and these are some struggles, or these are some really cool stories around how I was able to accomplish them. And that's valid. But what gives it a vivivity, if I can say that 3 times fast, what gives it a vitality or that spark is that you're still active in the game and you're still on the court. And that occurs when you give your keynotes, and that occurs when you give your speeches. So it gives you, I don't know, more pedigree, more cachet, more authority when you're out there sharing, you know, what you share. Have you found that to be the case?
I think that I have found that to be the case. Yeah. And I'm not sure, because I can't speak for other speakers because I don't know their full experience, but I have, especially in the last couple of years, really embraced this message wholeheartedly because I understand it now. I understand how important it is through my own experience. You know, I talked about the depression I went through in university. Well, I've hit a few depressions since university. Now, they haven't been as intense and as crippling because I've learned things about myself. And I understand now that there's habits, things that I can do, right? My toolkit, my mental health toolkit of habits that work for me, that allow me to navigate stress. I have a support network that I can lean on, a therapist. I have friends, people that I can go to for that type of support. But also, I've realized that anytime I go through any type of dip, a large contributing factor is usually that there's a big piece of my life where I'm not being authentic. Whether it's I'm working on something that I don't truly love, so I'm spending a lot of my time on something that I don't actually love. I'm in a relationship that isn't right for me, that doesn't allow me to be the full expression of myself, or, you know, many number of things. And so it actually forces me to slow down and actually look at, okay, what's wrong here in my life? And that when I start to align myself around my true self, then life starts to happen for me and I start to enjoy myself and there's a flow of life. And so I've really tried to embrace this the last couple years, to walk the walk and to do what I speak about, because it allows me to be more authentic on stage. I just think it's so important as a speaker to be the same person on stage as you are off stage.
Right.
Because you can tell I can tell, I guess I should say, when a speaker is not being themselves on stage and it doesn't resonate with me. I just don't listen to them as much as I would for someone that I see speak and I say, you know what? I know that person is going to be the same way when I ask them a question off stage.
Right.
And so that authenticity not only resonates, but you build trust with the audience. And so if they're going to be receptive to the takeaways, you have to build trust, which means you have to be yourself, but you also have to be vulnerable and you have to be open.
Right.
You have to share parts of yourself that you may not be comfortable sharing. And as a speaker, the first time I shared my story about being depressed in university, I was so scared to do it. My hands were actually shaking. That I had to put my hands in a fist and put them behind my back. And the next time I shared it, still shaking, but a little bit less, and then a little bit less, until now I look forward to the opportunity to talk about it because I know it's a tool that I have to help others. And that's when I started to understand these things that I thought were my weaknesses actually could be my strengths.
Right.
And I think nowadays it's important to understand, as more and more people are struggling, you know, anxiety and depression have just increased since the pandemic, right? But as leaders and as a teammate, you need to understand that the person working next to you, the person working under you, at least 25% of those people are really struggling. So you have to lead with empathy. You have to understand that this is part of the human experience and be there for them as a human being. One, so that you can just be there as a fellow human being, but also so you can divert a crisis before it becomes that crisis. And so I think as a teammate, as a leader, by sharing your story, you allow other people to share theirs, and also let people know that they have these resources. That's when I speak to an organization, I understand what their benefits are, what their resources are, so I can point people in the right direction and say, look, we all have to take care of our mental health just like we have to take care of our physical health.
And it's a question of the pandemic revealing or unconcealing people struggling, mental health issues, depression. But on the other hand, it's become less taboo or less of a stigma. So in a weird way, there's an upside to people having these struggles and challenges in the context of a pandemic, where the stigma it's been destigmatized.
100%. And that is this absolutely a silver lining of the pandemic. Just the fact that more people are talking about it. It's a global conversation. It didn't used to be, right? I've been speaking about mental health for 6 years, and I would never bill myself as a mental health speaker. It wouldn't sell. I'd always talk about it, but I just wouldn't position it as a mental health talk. And what I've realized is that there's this connection between purpose and mental health. And that is the key, is that when you find purpose in your work and you find purpose outside of your work, you are happier, right?
Right.
You are more fulfilled.
Yeah.
And so I think that the best leaders, they encourage their team to go after their passions, and they encourage them to find those things in their life that fuel them. Because when you're doing the things that you love, you have more energy, you're more alive. Then you can deploy that energy in any way that you wish. So by putting yourself first, you put yourself in a position to serve others. So it's not selfish, it's actually service. And that is the key here, is that there's this old way of thinking that you have to grind through it, and that it's selfish for me to do these things. I have all these responsibilities. And I think it's the opposite, right? And my definition of a bucket list is different than most people, because my definition is anything that's going to make you feel more energized, more like yourself, bring you more joy, bring you more happiness, right? So it's more about feelings. And so instead of just thinking about adventure and travel, which is what I used to think about a bucket list, I thought skydive, bungee jump, travel to Europe. That encapsulates one of 10 categories of your life. So I talk about 10 categories of life when you're thinking about a bucket list. And that's really what the bucket list journal is, right? This is the book that is your roadmap and keeps you accountable to your goals. You write your list in 10 categories. What are your physical health goals, relationship goals, creative goals, intellectual? How do you want to give back? Financial, professional. So you write your list in a way that you have a structure, and then you learn about the barriers, right? There's 3 things that stop us from achieving these goals. And then there's these steps to achieve them, which I speak to in the keynote, which are the 5 steps to make the impossible possible.
I love that book and that journal, and I've shared it with people, and they find it as just a great resource. And putting it down on paper and writing it brings it into existence, which is just so powerful, because the fear has us trapped and constrained, and we often don't even want to go through the exercise, but it brings it into light. Ben, there's so much to unpack, but I just want to keep moving the conversation forward. I know, our audience is growing and our podcast is growing little by little, kind of like the Knicks are right now. Mm-hmm. So we're going to get a lot of listeners in, and I'd like you to share your thoughts on regret. Just for a moment here. On the surface, it's a total time waster, but sometimes it's hard. If you're living a small, contained, constrained, unself-expressed life, there might be the way that you might not be aware of any regrets. But if you're out there swinging big, trying to be fully self-expressed and unconstrained in your life, there might be some regrets along the way. What are your tips for, recontextualizing or reframing regrets as insights, introspection, as a roadmap, instead of kind of hindsight and Monday morning quarterbacking?
Well, I'll say this. It's better to have regrets in your life than at the end of your life. Because most people at the end of their life, the biggest regret they have, and this is through research out of Cornell by Dr. 𝘭𝘮𝘮𝑗𝑗, who's a psychologist, he found that people at the end of their life, when he asked folks on their deathbed, what's your number one regret? Number one answer, 76% of the time, was, I wish I would have lived for me. right? I wish I would have lived the life that I wanted, not the life other people wanted for me or what was expected of me. And so he found that people regret the things they didn't do, not the things they did at the end of your life. But when you're living, you tend to regret, you have these regrets around these things that you did versus the inactions. So what we don't want is to reach the end of our life and suddenly realize, crap, I didn't do the things that I wanted to do. And so I think that when you do have regrets, it means you're actually trying the things. And that's good because you would much rather try and fail than to have the regret, I wish I would have tried. Because at least when you try and you fail, you learn something about yourself, you grow, and usually it points you in the direction that you ultimately want to go or need to go. So I like to use my future self as a barometer of if I'm trying to make a decision, I'm not making the decision. I ask my 90-year-old self, would you regret not doing this? And if the answer is yes, then I have to try.
Yeah.
Because I'm committed to not having regrets of inaction on my deathbed.
What's the name of the person who did research at Cornell?
𝘨𝘰𝘮𝘮𝘯𝘮.
𝘨𝘰𝘮𝘮𝘮, and a little bit more probably better known name would be Daniel Pink, who recently, published a book last year on this very topic. And years beforehand, I would just innately, Ben, I would hear people, I have no regrets. And I was kind of like a little bit astonished, like, really? Like, you have no regrets? Like, and this is when I was in my 20s, and I'm still in my 20s.
Right. Yeah.
But, it just something instinctually on the guttural level was kind of like, how can you, like, I don't know, have no regrets? I mean, even as a 12-year-old at the school dance, not going over and asking, this person to dance or whatever, yeah. I mean, if you're alive and you have a pulse, I think that there are regrets, and it's just a function of that you're in the game. And then B, as you said, people at their end of their life, as the research says, it's not having been out there on the court, taking the swings. I just find it fascinating. And that's why I know so many groups that you speak to, whether it's corporate or universities, educational organizations, that they really dial in and plug into that conversation and reframing it. That's why I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that. I want to shift the conversation a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. No, it's a great point. I think too, that's interesting to just hit the nail on the head here with.
Please.
I think that what most people don't realize when it comes to my keynote is I think you see bucket list and you you get a sense of my story and you put together in your mind what you think the keynote will be, right? I understand. I know what a bucket list is and I get it. And what I found is that the depth of the impact, what really happens here is that it ignites people and wakes them up to this idea that they can be the best version of themselves and gives them the tools and the actual tangible small steps to make that happen. And then once that fire is ignited, because people get inspired by the story, and then I connect it to why did I tell you this story? How does this idea impact your mental health, your career, your organization, your legacy? So then it's like, okay, I'm inspired. I understand why. And the last piece is, how do you do it? And those are the steps that I mentioned, the 5 steps to make the impossible possible. And then the real power is then when leadership takes this message and runs with it, right? And they say off the end of the keynote, guys, we're so inspired by all of the dreams you're sharing. We'll do a dream wall where people will write their dreams. We'll do sharing where people share their bucket list items with each other, helping each other achieve their list items. And then there's all these ways that organizations kind of run with this idea to embrace it and fuel it afterwards, which ultimately shifts the culture. So Lululemon has a goal fund where they fund their employees' dreams.
Yep.
Right. So they had this before I spoke. So they already had this idea, this culture of enabling people to do their passions, but they actually fund them. Okay. Lincoln Financial, I've spoken to, I think 9 or 10 times. They have a bucket list challenge where they report and promote personal wins, right? So you want to celebrate the wins. And what that does is anytime they share a story of a photo and a short blurb of Mary, who just learned meditation, or John, who just finished building his dream house, that reporting and promotion proves to the rest of the associates, wow, they really want us to do these things. They're celebrating these wins. And then you create peer-to-peer facilitation of dreams. You get people helping each other. They have secret GoFundMes where they fund their team's dreams. I have nothing to do with it, right? They're just doing it. Right. Autodesk, their most active non-work Slack channel is a bucket list Slack channel. where they're checking in on each other. Deloitte does bucket list meetups in their ERGs. Sometimes the CEO will come up and be like, we want to give you guys a $100 stipend towards your dream, right? So you don't need to do that because people are going to be fired up and they're going to know how to achieve those things, but you can really embrace this. And that's why there's a testimonial from Lincoln that says not a keynote, it's a culture shifting experience, right? Deloitte is a catalyst moment because it shifts the direction of the culture. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. Why? Because if you look at the 3 barriers, here's why we don't accomplish these types of passions and goals. Number 1, there's no deadlines. We have to create accountability. We have deadlines for everything else in our life. With these personal passions, we don't. We have structures of accountability within the workplace. We have leaders to keep us accountable, right? We have teammates we don't want to let down. All of these structures of accountability can be used to drive us towards our personal goals. So when leaders ask team members, hey, what's on your bucket list? And then a couple of weeks later, checks in, hey, how's training for the marathon coming? That's going to drive that person towards that goal. Then they're going to achieve that goal, associate that win with the leader and the organization, right? That's how it works. So every organization has a different internal structure of these types of accountability, one-on-one reviews, different layers of accountability, but you can see how that loop works. Identify the goal, identify the next step, check in on that. And identify the next step, check in on that. And Matthew Kelly wrote a book called The Dream Manager, right? It's about a janitorial services company that's seen tremendous turnover. They invent a position called a dream manager. The dream manager's job is to ask the janitors, what's your dream? And then figure out the next step to that dream, check in once a month. So this idea actually fits into the corporate environment really seamlessly, okay? That's how you tackle the first problem, which is that there's no deadlines. The second problem is that we're usually waiting to feel inspired to go after these goals, but it never comes, right? So you create your own inspiration by taking tiny steps of action. So mood follows action, as Rich Roll says. So you're the architect of your own inspiration through action. You don't need to know how you're going to achieve the goal. You just need to take the very first step. You'll figure out the second after the first. So you start to feel this momentum as you go, and the fear stops us, as you said.
Right.
And that's the third barrier, which is the biggest, which is fear of what other people think or fear of failure. And so as you start to identify what's the real risk versus the imagined risk, and you start to understand that fear doesn't go away. This is not something that you will ever feel ready to do. You know what I mean? Like that discomfort is part and parcel with doing something that is truly important to you. It's like a tax you have to pay to achieve your goal. That discomfort means that you're growing. You're learning something about yourself. So you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, knowing that you're going to have to grow, which, as any leader would tell you, you can't get to a position that you want to get to if you coast. You need to put yourself out there. You need to take risks. You need to push yourself in order to achieve great things. But the truth is, you don't know what's possible until you're actually doing it. So you can't oftentimes imagine yourself achieving that thing until you're there and you realize, holy crap, I made it.
Right. And those mini wins along the way, it's like the energy begets energy. It's like people get inspired and they see something huge that's impossible. I want to run the marathon, or I want to get my, weight, I have a massive breakthrough financially or something. And they're really, really inspired. And then the gap from where someone is at the present moment to where they have to get to is so enormous. It's very quick that the inspiration and the motivation and what's possible dissipates and gets buried, to use the source of what you're talking about. But the key, what I'm hearing from you is, and what has worked in my personal life, and I know what you share with me in your personal life, is having the structure, having the milestones, and accountability, or, having that community around you where you've spoken and shared these dreams, these hopes, these possibilities to, where they can check in a loving way, not like a school teacher, did you do your homework kind of thing.
Exactly. I think the accountability is the most powerful piece of this. I would not be talking to you if I did not have 3 friends to keep me accountable to this bucket list for the last 10, 15 years. I wouldn't have done the first thing. There were so many times when I didn't want to move forward, and one of the other guys said, okay, let's go. We got to do it.
Right.
Come on.
You don't want to make a call. You don't want to be vulnerable, extend yourself, afraid of egg on the face, another no. I have a very dear friend from childhood who had a very well-known billionaire investor invest in his company. It's amazing. And he's gotten all this venture capital and everything. And I was talking to him the other day and I said, Stuart, he had such a positive outlook. It was 97 no's 97 meetings of pitching for funding. 97. First of all, my first thought is that's a book, 97 No's. That's a TED Talk. But he just said, it was my mother, it was my wife, it was my father, it was everybody putting wind in the sails when I wanted to drop anchor. And I was so touched by that, so parapeting or zip lining or jumping out of an airplane, they're all cool and they're all kind of the conventional bucket list things. But you've taken it to the world of possibilities where it ripples out. And it's just such a beautiful thing, Ben. I know you're so fulfilled in your work and you're still working on your bucket list, which brings power to your work. If I could ask you, what's next on your bucket list?
Great question. Number 100 is go to space. So that's something that I'm working on and pretty close to inking a deal with a space tourism company for a flight in 2025. I'm also interested in...
Is that orbiting just beyond the stratosphere? Get technical for me for a minute there. That's not out to the space station or anything.
No, it's sort of to the edge of space. I can see... here's what I'm really trying to do here. I'm trying to experience now I've lost the term, the orbital effect, the overview effect, right? Okay. Which is what astronauts experience when they see the Earth from that vantage. They experience this sense of oneness with the Earth and appreciation for Mother Nature, and it's for some a pretty life-changing experience. And so I would like that experience. Right? I would love to have this. Like anytime I can have a moment that will shift my perception, I am all for it. So the overview effect sounds like a pretty impactful experience. And so I think it's not about escaping Earth, it's about appreciating Earth.
I hear you.
And so that's one thing that I'd love to do. As well, I'm working towards finishing the Buried Life documentary, which is the project we started as a film. We thought it would take 2 weeks to finish. And here I am 15 years later, and we have a trailer. So the whole journey that I speak about is filmed. So I'd love to have that as sort of our legacy piece and make the feature-length documentary. So I'm working on that as well with the guys and making that happen.
And once again, probably revisiting, viewing from a space so many years later and seeing how it's evolved and grown, you now can relate to what was recorded in a whole different way. And it just must be so fascinating to see the evolution of where you are now from whence it once began. It's so cool. I'm a little bit of a space nerd myself, and we just recently, with my family and children and wife, we went to Cape Canaveral. Cool. I was there in 1977.
Wow.
And it was really cool. We went to the simulators. We went out to the launching pad. I'm an admitted kind of closeted space nerd. I work with many astronauts. I booked Alan Bean, who was the fourth man on the moon. And they all do talk about that effect. But I don't know if it's a challenge, but I would share or offer the idea that whilst you're seeking out that sensation and that experience, don't be predisposed that something unexpected is going to happen as well. And I know that's not who you are, but I just want the most fulfilling experience. And if you're looking for what you think is predetermined, predisposed, you might miss some other stuff. So that's my unsolicited kind of space nerd desire.
Sound advice.
You look the other way and it's cold and dark, not looking down in Earth, it's,
I might miss the flying space object, the alien going by.
You might, you're right. Keep your eyes out for that. All right. Take your Oculus off for that moment.
That's right.
Last question here. And then we're going to do something that we've been doing at the end of our podcast starting this year is we're going to do a little bit of rapid fire 20 questions. Okay. So right now, other than those current items on your bucket list that you're close to inking a deal on, what is it that you're working on that most excites you?
Well, I am honestly, it's a bit of inside baseball, but I'm putting together my new speaker reel, which I'm so excited about because I love making videos, right? And so I'm actually just doing more content in general. Like I'm making more social videos. I'm really excited about my new reel. But, the bucket list journal was my big thing last year because I didn't have anything for people like my friends that couldn't come to my keynotes to digest the content that I'm speaking about. And so I wanted to make like a tool that people could actually use, and something that also extended the impact of the keynote, so that once I had them inspired and they knew what they needed to do, there was something for them to follow and keep them accountable. And so now I'm going to be doing more video content to really extend that message as far as I can, and working towards some of these bigger ideas with different organizations around like how can they really embrace this idea and bring it to their team. Because I think that there was a bit of a shift during the pandemic where people's priorities shifted a little bit, and they realized, one, that we're human and my life is fragile, and two, oh, maybe this is important and this isn't as important as I thought it was. And I don't think you can unsee that once that happens. So I think collectively our perception has changed. And also, as more and more of my generation starts to fill the workforce, and younger generations don't care as much about money, and we care more about experiences and a fulfilled life.
So true.
And so I think organizations and leaders not only have to understand that, but they also actually have to embrace that themselves. And they have to lead by example, and they have to live the life that they want their teams to live, to show what's possible. Because one of the things I talk about is the ripple effect. And that is simply by doing what you love, you inspire other people to do what they love.
Yeah, it's infectious. It's
contagious.
And
it is. And so it's a great win-win where you get to do the things that are important to you, and then you have other people see you do that. Right. And then they believe they can do those things.
And that's something we don't want the vaccine for.
Yeah, exactly.
We want that to spread. Well, I'm looking forward to that reel, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you. I know we're off to Europe with a favorite, best client of mine, and I'm just so thrilled and excited to be able to share that experience with you. Are you ready? Are you ready for the rapid fire?
I'm ready.
You know, I don't know if we call it word association, but just what comes to mind. What are you most grateful for in life?
My friends and my family. Yeah. The people, my relationships.
Gotcha.
Fuel me.
All righty. What's the most interesting thing about you that we wouldn't learn from your resume?
I don't eat dairy.
Okay.
I don't know if that's interesting, but that's the first thing that came to mind.
Great. If you could snap your fingers and instantly make the world better, what would you do?
I'd have everyone do the things that they love in their life, because I think that would create a ripple effect around the world.
Yes. What are 3 things that bring a smile to your face?
Tennis, surprising people that I love, like friends and family, for their birthday or just out of the blue, and omakase sushi.
Wow. Good combo. What's the last thing you read?
I'm reading The Hoffman Process at the moment, which is the process I told you about that I just did.
Yes.
Transformational process.
What makes you laugh?
Portlandia.
Yeah, I was just there. It's where 20-somethings go to retire. Who do you look up to?
I actually look up to Tony Robbins. Yeah, I've always looked up to him, and I met him a couple of times, and I just am in awe with what he is able to do every day.
Do you have a hidden talent?
I can make up songs on the spot pretty well.
Very cool. Very cool. What's something that you like to do but you suck at?
Oh, good question. I'm going to say tennis, although I think I'm pretty good, but I'm not. I still can't serve, which we talked about. Yeah. I love it, and I'm committed to getting better. So I'm going to say tennis.
You got to go see the Merlin of Marina, Roger.
I literally texted him today.
Great. Well, Ben, that's the end of our time together. Just a really incredible conversation, so enlightening, and your warmth, your generosity, and your commitment to having people be fully self-expressed, the best expression of themselves, and making a difference in the world just comes through every pore, every word, every cell in your body and your being. And thanks for imparting that with us today.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. That means a lot.
You got it. If you'd like to learn more about this speaker, visit our website at thekeynotecurators.com. There you'll find dozens of videos of speakers that are a perfect fit for your event. If you'd like to reach out directly, please click on the link below in the description. My name is Seth Dechtman, and you've been watching Curated Insights.